Welcome to the LDN Radio Show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elseygood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low dose naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us. This show is sponsored by our members who made donations. We'd like to give them a very big thank you. We have to cover the monthly costs of the radio station's software, bandwidth, phone lines and phone calls to be able to continue with the radio show. And thank you for listening. Today I'm joined by two special people who are husband and wife team. We've got Chris, who takes LDN for allergies, and Ellen, who has got MS. And to start with, we're going to be talking to Ellen. Thank you for joining us today, Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we're interested in finding out your MS story. When were you diagnosed with MS?
Okay, well, I was diagnosed at the end of 2013. Prior to that, there was really, we don't know when it started, because my symptoms were really not very crippling. I had no crippling issues. I just had some weakness in my legs and my one leg, my left side. And I had been working as a nurse for a couple of years, and I kind of thought it was a good time to, get myself checked out and let's see what's going on. And I went to the doctor, and, he gave me some physical therapy. He said, go do some physical therapy. And, I didn't know what it was. And so I did that, and, still wasn't going away. And, next, the next, which was a strange thing was happening, was I was getting this ringing in my ears. Mm-hmm. And, being in the healthcare profession, really everybody, there's so much information out there to do so much research. And so, plugging in, ringing in the ears in the internet and just seeing what I come up with, and feeling I have a very general, very wise sense of looking at realistic things online and seeing what's real versus what's, not real. And I had noticed there was some link to, MS as ringing in the ears as a symptom, and, but rare. And then I went back to the doctor and I said, I can't help but think maybe there's a link between my weakness, my and the pains in my left leg were such that at one point I thought there was some deep vein thromboses going on, because and I'd never experienced it, but again, having been around it, I thought, well, let me get that checked out. Of course, that was negative. So when I went back to him with the ringing in the ears, I said, let's figure out what we can do to, see if there is any relation. So he said, well, let's put you on steroids for 2 weeks. And if the ringing still exists, then we'll, look further. So of course, the ringing still was continuing. And so then, we went and did an MRI. And then I'll never forget the night that he called me. I was working at the hospital, and the secretary said, well, there's a phone call for you. My phone was on silent because I never answer it when I'm at work. So I took the phone at the desk, and he's like, Ellen, I just got back your results. And, so there's, and it's funny, he's talking to me, and all I heard the word lesions. And again, knowing about this and having, had patients with issues. And so I know the lingo, and he knows I know the lingo because he knows I'm a nurse. So he's speaking to me kind of on a professional basis, but kind of on I kind of can't believe that this came back like this, because he was almost thinking of this MRI as kind of this, we'll just rule it out, And so, so from there, we kind of just, and there was many lesions, and interestingly enough, so many that it was just such a very, my symptoms are not, I have balance issues. I have left-sided weakness. And, one could say that fatigue and all the good stuff that's not so easy to see is probably a part of this, but for the amount of lesions that I had, I was always, and still am, so fascinated that I am very lucky, I find, that is not as detrimental as it could be. But since the night that I was diagnosed, and of course he set me up with a neurologist in the area that he trusted. And so I went, it was about a month out because those, neurologist appointments are very, very, very hard to come by. So in that time, my husband was researching left, right, up, down, all the time, so much research. And he had been coming across LDN. And, he said, well, this looks like something, we need to, when we go to the doctor, we need to discuss this and talk about it, So I said, okay, I'm up for anything. And I certainly knew the effects of DMDs and really the side effects. And the fact that it doesn't heal the scars. It doesn't do anything but supposedly prevent. And that's not even 100%. So I was never, ever sold on DMDs ever. And, it would have to take a neurologist beating me over the head and saying, you have to take this or else you will die for me to take these, So, because again, my symptoms weren't, and it's not that I didn't believe because there was so many lesions, there was just no doubt that it was MS, that this is MS, that's it, but I was just not, I was, okay, I'm not sadly, it's to the point where some people are. So I'm going to see what else there is, and so we went to the neurologist, and he, all of these beautiful, pretty pamphlets and booklets and bags with all of the medications that were available for MS. It was like a sales pitch. It was very much, try this one, and this one is great, and but you might die if you try this one. But that's just a little thing. We'll do a blood test, and we'll make sure that you don't have to, you're not going to die because of that. It was this very, very sales pitch type of of course he gave me an exam, and it was then I realized that I did have balance issues, and there was such that again the diagnosis was not that there was no question that it was that it was MS. So we asked about LDN, and he, and I get it. Again, being a healthcare professional, I understand they don't want the liability. They don't want to have that. They want to put you on one of their drugs. They want to say, okay, here's another one that I don't have to worry about, and we'll deal with issues as they arise. But at least I know that that person is on the medication that I am familiar with. So he didn't want to. So we went ahead and we looked for another neurologist, again in the area. And this one, now she, again, she no doubt, MS for sure. She also gave me the pretty brochures, and she pretty much said, well, okay, I guess if you want to try this, sure. But you know what? You're going to end up in a wheelchair in 5 years. That's all I can say. And if you don't go on one of these medications that I want you to go on, I can't, and I can imagine, the doctors, the transcription of my meeting that night, I'm picturing it in my head, and, I'm not assuming any liability for this, and I can't claim any responsibility. This person wanted to do it, and they insisted. Surprisingly, she wrote me the prescription, and so we got the prescription, and we were happy. We weren't happy with her, but we were definitely happy with the prescription. So I started it, and, with even with the DMDs, it's not so much that well, for me anyway, my symptoms never went away. I mean, I still have weakness. I still have, the fatigue and just balance issues. But for me, it's really so much the fact that I am not suffering from any side effects from the big hitter medications that everybody wanted me to be on, and so because I don't, I take it every day, and the only side effect I had, was, the dreams, the crazy dreams, and I stopped taking it at night, and I switched to day, and it's been fine. In terms of side effects, one can say that I've really, as far as sickness, I've not been sick significantly, which I completely attribute to LDN. So much that I'm my children, who, one's 16 and one's 13, I'm thinking of all sorts of ways to try to get them to go on LDN because I mean, truly, it's to me that my immune system, I feel so much stronger because of it. And like I said, my MS symptoms, and I noticed also interesting as I learned I had MS, I realizing, well, gee, my symptoms get worse, 2 weeks before my menstrual cycle, and then they kind of go away a little bit after, but then they come back again. So like all those little things I was noticing, again, no correlation here and there. And again, my symptoms have been managed. And so since that time, we've found a new neurologist. We had to go a couple hours away for one who I didn't want to go to a doctor who was just, really, I wanted a neurologist. I wanted somebody who knew specifically my condition and was able to say, okay, I'll put you on this and we'll see, and that's exactly who I found, and he said to me, well, it's your body and, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And that was, we've been with this doctor ever since. And ever since all of my MRIs and so he's insisted. So I'm on this medication that he doesn't necessarily love, but my bargain to him is I am going for MRIs. We've got it narrowed down to every year, depending on insurances, type of a thing. So we go, to the yearly MRIs and they have been stable ever since. So, again, and I wish that I could say, other than like the benefits of my immune system being so strong, I'm waiting for, the time when my lesions can be healed. And I know LDN doesn't, or at least not for me, doesn't do that. But that would be my next goal. But the fact that I feel that, LDN has definitely kept things in check for me. And as a result, I've had, my stable MRIs and my doctor's happy and he's not bugging me to go on anything else. If it wasn't for my husband doing so much research and for your information that you put out there, it just, I don't know where I'd be. So it's been all good ever since, which is wonderful.
So how long have you been taking LDN?
Since then, since 2013, about January of 2013.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So about 4 years.
Yeah. So.
Now, there are some people who report to me that they're scarring the plaques that go. I had an MRI last year, and I'm actually seeing my doctor in a couple of days. And all the neurologist would tell me was there were no active lesions. But my question was, are there any more than the first one I had like 14 years ago? But anyway,
yes,
he wouldn't tell me. So I'll have to speak to my doctor and see if, is the lesion still as big as originally? Are there more or whatever? So that will be interesting. But some people do report that their lesions go. So, maybe you'll be lucky. Maybe I've been lucky and don't know it.
It could be. And they don't want you to know it. They don't want to tell you.
Yeah, well, they don't like LDN either. Balance. I just reminded me of when I was being diagnosed. And you have to put one foot in front of the other like a drunk and walk in a straight line. I was all over the place. I couldn't do it. And then I was reaching across and holding on to something. And he looked at me and he said, "You've got to let go." And it was just like, whoa. And I came home and I was so angry with myself. I was so frustrated. And I stood up and I was trying to do it. And my husband said, "Sit down, you can't do it." And it was like, I can do it. I've always been able to do it. And I was crying, trying to do it. And I said, I'm going to keep practicing. If I practice, I'll be able to do it. But it's
exactly.
It's horrible, isn't it? But I think if you give up the fight and don't keep trying, as I say, I've been doing this over 14 years now. And the people who accept they've got MS and accept they are disabled, accept without trying to push the envelope to, improve themselves, go downhill quite quickly. You've got
Exactly.
to keeping a positive outlook and trying hard to overcome it. And it isn't easy when you suffer with fatigue.
Yes.
I still have fatigue. I had a relapse when I lost my mum 18 months ago. And
sorry.
my fatigue was really bad, and it's still bad. I can sit and I can work on the computer, but physically getting up and moving around is such an effort. It's just, I'm so tired.
Yes,
and it sounds pathetic, doesn't it? But I'm so tired.
It is. And the doctor would say to me, just practice, energy conservation and, figure out the times a day when you have the most energy and give yourself breaks. And for me, that was, I do not give myself breaks. So yes, absolutely. And interesting when being diagnosed for me, as far as accepting it that you mentioned, I was actually very relieved that somebody could put a label on me, because I know that there have been people for years, and I have one lesion, but they won't say it's MS, and I've done, and for me to have, and my husband, on the other hand, when, this was a big deal for him, and it wasn't, and I'm the one comforting him. Listen, this is okay, and we're fortunate. My symptoms aren't detrimental, and we don't know what the future is going to bring, but we have to take this realistically. But the fact that I was able to get diagnosed and they were able to then, because of that, now I can go on LDN, and so that was a big relief for me.
Well, I was very sick when I was diagnosed. I had lots of awful symptoms, but my mum said to me, once I knew it was MS, I was told it was either I'd had a stroke, or I'd got a brain tumour, or I'd caught some tropical disease, or it was MS. But they didn't think it was MS because I'd lost the hearing in my left ear, and apparently you don't lose your hearing. So it was like, okay. So
apparently.
Yeah, apparently. Can we have another option here? I didn't really fancy any of those choices, even though I didn't know what a tropical disease was and hadn't been anywhere. So I thought that was strange. But it was like, okay. So then I was told it is MS. And I said to my mum, it's MS. And she said, well, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter, because it doesn't make you any better or any worse. It's just a label.
Wow.
You just know what it is. And and I thought that was really good. I could get my head around that and understand it, because this is me, this is how I am, and this is what it's called. But I had it for a long, long time, and I always thought every episode that I'd had was an individual case, and it came and it went, and it was irrelevant. It wasn't until you start putting all the pieces together of the jigsaw puzzle that you see this picture that you'd rather not see. But,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but I'm so pleased that you found LDN, and
so am I.
You said that your symptoms hadn't improved. What has LDN done for you? How different do you feel before and after, with all the endorphin effects and things?
Absolutely. I just, other than, I would like to have the most effect for, be able to take it at night, but I can't. And I've accepted that, so I feel like it would be even more helpful if I could. But to that effect, I mean, I have not been sick. I've really not been sick. And I do, you feel more, you just feel stronger. You really do feel stronger with it. And I don't worry about taking it. I don't have to think about side effects, that are going to be detrimental to me. I don't have to, and I'm fortunate enough to not be, I don't have any other sicknesses, other illnesses that are going on in my life. So I don't even have to think about, medication, contradiction, things that affect other medications. And I'm lucky in that respect, but, I take my LDN and I don't have to think about it, and I sometimes I've, on occasion forgotten, and I don't have to, I know that it's have to take it every day, and it's actually okay if you take it every other day, but I want to take it every day because I know that I feel better when I take it, and I just know that I'm not suffering anything that that any of the other medications would be causing me to have. So yeah, very grateful.
And have you changed your diet at all, or taking any extra supplements?
I do. I do vitamin D. My vitamin D level was found to be on the borderline. It was normal, but it was very low. So I take vitamin D. I take krill oil. In the beginning, I was trying to follow more like a change of life modified type of a diet. But I'll be honest, that kind of fell by the wayside, and it needs to happen. I know that diet has absolutely everything to do with the body, the immune system. So I'm fortunate enough to I am a healthy weight, and I don't have any other issues going on, but I do know that diet is something that I do need to pay a little more attention about, and perhaps that's my New Year's resolution for 2018.
Well, it's been so amazing to speak to you and hear your journey, and
thank you.
Long may it last, and you'll have to let me know, if the MRIs improve. That would be amazing.
Absolutely. They just they don't count the lesions. They just say many, numerous. And I just was always, and my husband's like, it doesn't matter, don't worry about it. And so it would be interesting and so when they look at from year to year, and they do cross sections, and they'll say, well, this one looks different, but he refers to it as like a loaf of raisin bread. And when the MRIs are sliced differently, so one lesion might look bigger from your, So, but so then he would look back at the year before, and he said, well, no, look at that. It's similar there. So that, and so based on that, there had been no changes. But I might start bugging him more to maybe put a number, just because it is interesting to see if there might be a decrease in lesions based on LDN. That'd be great.
Well, of course.
Be great.
The whole object of taking LDN is to halt the progression of a disease, whatever disease it is. So, even if you stay as you are on the platform you are today and don't deteriorate any further, then it's an amazing thing, isn't it? With a progressive disease, to be able to halt it. I mean, that was my aim when I first started.
Absolutely. It's amazing. It really is.
Okay. Well, it was lovely speaking to you. And can we speak to Chris
you too.
now? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Hi, Linda. How you doing?
Hi, Chris. Fine. Well, we've just spoken to Ellen, and we found out it was through you that she heard about LDN. So that is good. Yeah. And before we started recording this, you told me that it was listening to a radio show that you found out about taking LDN for allergies. Would you like to explain more?
Oh, actually, I found out through your interviews that you've done in the past. And I actually, when I was researching for Ellen, I came across a couple of interviews that you did where one of the pleasant side effects of LDN was that some people's allergies were alleviated by using LDN. So that definitely perked my interest a lot.
So did you suffer badly with allergies?
Oh, yes. I have many years ago when I was in college, I had a very severe case of allergies. I developed it pretty much when I was around 21, sort of like in my junior year in college. I had a tremendous amount of sinus pressure. All of a sudden, it just developed at one time. And it was during allergy season. I think it was in the month of May. And it felt like my head was pressured so much that it felt like my head was like the size of a tennis ball. It was really like that amount of pressure. This was a feeling that just wouldn't go away. It was nonstop and was always with me like 24/7 every single day. what eventually I ended up doing was going to an ENT and he recommended to alleviate a blockage that he saw in my sinuses. And so I went through a sinus surgery to alleviate that. So, which did good, definitely gave a lot of relief after doing that surgery. Also, a couple of months later, I think the first time that we had frost also kind of helped it out along. But I was never 100% I still had lots of sinus irritation. Still, because I'm allergic to like molds and dust, it's with you constantly. So it got to a point where when I was at school at college, I couldn't even study at a library because of all the dust from books and such. If I was there like for an hour, I would be like in great amount of pain. So I would have lots of sinus pressure and everything. So what I ended up doing is adapting and I went to labs because there was no carpeting or any kind of dust in those facilities at my college. So I used to do my studying at labs. So when that started during that time, my senior year, I ended up finally going to an internal medicine doctor, and he actually tested me for allergies. He did that little skin prick where they put the allergens into your skin, and then they see what kind of reaction your body had. Mm-hmm. Well, when he did that, it was off the charts. Wow. My whole arm, every single thing that he put in there showed a reaction to it. I think, and on a scale of 1 to 4, with 4 being the worst, I think like 90% of them were at 4. Wow. So, and he said, well, after he saw that, he's like, yep, I guess allergy shots definitely can help you. So I started doing that. It was about once a week initially. I did that for a year or two, and then I think eventually I progressed to doing that, then allergy shots like once a week. The problem is, yes, it did help me, but never fully. It only went so far. I still had lots of issues. I still was getting sinusitis. I would average sinusitis about 2 or 3 times a year. And the time that I usually get sinusitis is kind of weird, but it's during the winter that I get it. And if you understand how sinuses work, they actually like the warmer and humid climates. Sinuses, anything that's dry, like when you're during the wintertime, when you have the heat on, it dries up, your house, and then that actually irritates your sinuses. And so and also cold irritates sinuses too. So that was when I usually had the problems, was during the winter months. I could get by on the summer, but the winter was always the toughest. So I used to have to take antibiotics 2 or 3 times a year because I was always getting sinusitis. I'm originally from the New York City area, and I actually moved down to North Carolina to be able to be put in a warmer climate and also a more humid climate too. So that, for health reasons, that was one of the main reasons why I came down here. So,
and did that help?
Oh yeah, yes. It shortens the period of time for the winter season, because really the winter season here is probably December, January, maybe the beginning of February. Yeah, my sinus issues were a lot less by coming down here. So, I guess finding about, I'll go into LDN. I sort of found out about LDN because of all the research that I did for my wife when she was first diagnosed with MS. I went on the initial, when I initially found out that she had, it was pretty much a shock. It was like the last thing I thought of, was to now worry about my wife, who's not even 40 at the time, to now she has something that's, pretty serious. And when I did, look online, it seemed very problematic when I started looking at the DMDs that were available and what people were saying about them, and what kind of reviews they were giving them and their experiences. So I was like, there's got to be something else out there. So I came across like a message board, and I don't know which one it was. And somebody was, they were talking about alternative treatments for MS, going through diet and stuff like that. And somebody mentioned, LDN. They were giving rave reviews, about it and how well it was working for them. So it's like, okay, I'll look this up and, see if I can see anything. So I actually went to the MS Society to look to see if they have any information on it. And it's sort of, my hopes are kind of dampened a little bit because it's like their statement was like, it may help, but it's still inconclusive whether or not, it truly works for MS and people should be using it, that they need more clinical trials and such. So that kind of dampened it a little bit. And then I think about 2 weeks later, I started looking again on message boards and stuff like that. And there were more and more people, mentioning LDN. I was like, okay, now I really have to research this. And that's when I started coming across, your interviews popped up right away. And I went through almost all your interviews that were related to MS. And I also listened to the doctors that you interviewed. And, I was very encouraged from what I was hearing. I would say after my wife was diagnosed, it felt like almost like a part-time job listening. And I would say for about a month and a half, it was like a part-time job listening to all your interviews. I was taking down notes and stuff like that because I knew if we were going to go to the doctor and we're going to get to LDN, the doctor probably doesn't know too much about LDN, but I would know more about if in case something, was off or whatever that didn't work, that we could do adjustments, when dealing with LDN, because really the doctor really has no idea, how to use it. So I also came across, which I thought was, I'll bring it up too, is also the videos with Skip Lenz. I think he came up with some great things, from the clinical surveys and everything. I listened to a couple of programs that he was also interviewed on the radio. He really has some very good information, especially for people who have MS. And he has done a lot of work in that area. And I really was blown away with the data that he was coming up with from his patients, from his customers, I should say. And here's a person who probably has filled out more prescriptions than anybody else when it comes to LDN. So there's somebody who get the feedback from patients. It would be him. So I also read also in trying to get, see what other people have gone through. I also read Chris Kerr's book, I guess, on case studies. Those who suffer much know much. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a great place to learn that, about others and what they were going through. And so that, and from that's how I learned about how LDN would work for allergies too. So that really piqued my interest. So I would say after I saw my wife for about a year, how well she was doing, I was like, you know what? I want to give this a shot too for allergies and see what happens. I know Dr. Bahari, I think it was actually in one of your interviews or something like that, somebody was mentioning that a lot of times during his practice that the spouses would actually say, you know what, my spouse is doing so well, why don't I try it too and see if it works for me? And that's how I felt too. As like, I know that feeling because I think for a year I was just like, I just want to see how it works with my wife and then I'm going to try it. So I started trying it. And in my first week, I actually had a kind of a weird thing that happened almost within 24 hours after I took LDN. I don't know if it's because of the timing or whatever, but I had almost like a flu-like symptom for about 2 days. I'm not sure if it's because I got the flu or if it was a reaction to the LDN or if it was just my body taking on something or wanting to get rid of something after taking the LDN. I really don't know. But after the flu-like symptoms went away after 48 hours, all of a sudden, I felt all the pressure from my sinuses just go way down. I would say my sinus pressure went down, 80 to 85% down. And it was a great feeling. I was like, I can't believe it. Here's a person who's tried everything. I've gone to see so many doctors. I've done decongestant. I've done antihistamines. I've done allergy shots, allergy drops, sinus surgery. You're talking to a person who's really gone out of their way to do a lot of things, and nothing has ever worked like this for me. It is without question the best thing I ever took. I now, as a side effect, I rarely get sick. I've only had one sinus infection since I've been on it, and that's it. And that right now, after being on it for 3 years, I should have had 8 or I would say, if it was the average, I would have had 7 or 9 infections during that period of time. So, and it also, I rarely get sick. That alone is worth the price of admission. So, the only thing I would say that's a negative, and I kind of have the same thing that my wife does, is that I have to take it in the mornings also. I tried to do it at night, and I have a harder time trying to sleep. So I end up taking it in the mornings. I also recommend for people to also, if they have some sleep issues, stay away from caffeine or something like that, because that also can disrupt your sleep. I know it definitely impacts me if I have a lot of caffeine during the day and I am taking LDN at the same time. That's not a good combination. So anyhow, for me, with being a person who suffers with my sinuses, caffeine is really not a good thing, because guess what caffeine does? It dries out your sinuses. So that's a negative. But it's sort of my Achilles heel, is because I do like coffee a lot. So, but yeah. So, but I will point out one thing, a good positive, because the pressure and all that stuff, and because of LDN, the drugs now that I take, such as Claritin, or if I have a bad day, the decongestants and a Claritin are more effective. I don't take them all the time, but let's say I wake up, I have a bad day, if I didn't get enough sleep, because that also irritates sinuses, if you have something like that. If I take something like that, I find the drug works so much better with the LDN. It's sort of like a great combination. So, I can't say more than enough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I've had sinusitis about 3 times in my life, where from your eye socket to halfway down your nose and your cheeks and everything just are unbelievably so painful. Really painful. Touch wood. As I say, I've only had it, I think, 3 times. Can remember. And one time I continually had to blow this awful stuff from my nose, and the more I blew, the more it seemed to produce, and it was awful. But even though I was getting rid of it by blowing my nose, and as I say, it was creating more, the pain didn't go. It was still really. It feel as though that area, and if you pressed on your cheekbones, that was just so painful. But you felt as though it was going to burst. That everything was just so blocked. That you couldn't sleep properly or anything. Oh goodness! So if you had that repeatedly, that must have been really something. And to have the relief of that not happening anymore.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
I know I said 85%, but there are days where I don't feel anything. Like today, we have a nice warm day here in North Carolina. It's about 60 degrees outside. The only thing I feel is a little nasal drip. I don't feel any pressure or anything like that. And it's an unbelievable feeling. I think, how bad I went through, 20 years ago or so, I thought I would never get to this level of comfort, and it's really been a blessing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Chris. This show is sponsored by our members who made donations. We'd like to give them a very big thank you. We have to cover the monthly costs of the radio station's software, bandwidth, phone lines and phone calls to be able to continue with the radio show. And thank you for listening. Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.